Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Crossroads of Cognizance, the one stop shop where we are cultivating a community around conversation and talking about all things woo woo, spiritual, the things in the world of magic, and a lot of very mundane things as well, but bringing an energetic awareness to them. So, with that, and the style of which we share, one of the things that we're going to be talking about today is the power of visualization. I think that visualization permeates everything that I do. I'm sure in large amounts some of the things that Katrina does. And so, we're going to be going over this topic today, the science behind it, how you can cultivate it in your life and use it to change, heal, and shift your circumstances. But before we get too heavy into that, we have some introductions to make. So as you sit down, get comfortable, let's have you um, select the video if you're watching this on Facebook because we want to see you, we want to hear from you, we want to know that you're there. And then if you're on YouTube, just keep being your comfortable self. Well, hopefully you have some comfort items with you: tea, blankets, pillows, and distraction-free space. And if this is your first time joining us, you're going to want to hit that like and subscribe button so you know when we're back on. It's mostly Thursdays, mostly at 5 or 5:01. And then as far as who we are, I am Dahlia Rose. I am the founder of the Conduit School, and I serve my community as a healer, a teacher, and a conduit for high vibration energies. I do this by teaching my students about spiritual development, energy work, meditation, crystal usage, energy work services, and I do a bit of spiritual counseling as well. I'm also pulling together ancient healing practices and hoping to support transformation in the lives of those who choose to work with me. And I do all of this because I believe that we need to expand the way that we look at healing and disrupt what healing has been thus far. And I want us to really reconnect with our bodies through that process and feel more empowered about what we think is possible. So, but I'm not here alone after all of that.
My name's Katrina Rasbold. I am a professional witch. And what that means is that I rub eggs on people to take curses out of them. I write books and I do spell work for people. And I'm half of crossroadsoccult.com, where my husband and I offer handmade magical items that we make ourselves here in our apothecary at home. And yeah, I guess that's about it, huh?
It's like the least of it. I mean, Katrina is a energy worker in terms of like one of the things that I love that happens that I don't automatically do with my Olympias is sending Reiki to things to correct the energy. And, on that topic, I wonder, I've never asked you this, is visualization a part of that process for you when you're,
It's a huge part. When I teach people to do the types of cleansings I do, I depend on the idea that they can conceptualize and learn what visualization is and visualize the energy that's moving through the person's body that they're working on. And the spell work especially involves huge amounts of visualization. And I'm sure that we'll get into that, but visualizing the outcome as an assurance and as though it has already been done is a huge part of what I do.
so on that note of visualization, I think it's kind of important to talk about, like you said, you depend on people to integrate that into their practice and to know how to go about it. But it is something that, with it being mainstream heavy right now, sort of takes on different definitions for different people. And you and I both have heard of people struggling with this. So I think it's a great place to define what visualization actually is. And that is to say, it involves like what I would say is a vivid mental image that of a desired outcome. So essentially we're taking there are multiple opportunities to either take an image or take what looks like a movie inside your head and play it out so that you can see beginning, middle, and end, or just look at snapshots of beginning, middle, and end. But there can be more to it. It's not always like as much as visualization and the word imply that you're looking at something. Sometimes there's more to the process. And so if you can't do the snapshot or the movie, there's other ways of going about it.
That's very true. And one of the ways that I teach my students about visualization, because as you said, a lot of people have a misconception about visualization. They think that they should be able to watch a movie in their head, and that is the beginning of visualization. And that's really a very developed form of visualization. And so when people come to me and say, I just can't do it, I don't visualize, it's not what I do, I say, well, of course you do. Because if I say to somebody, and I mention this in my classes all the time as an example, if I say, okay, in your mind, see a strawberry. Most people have seen a strawberry. And so they are going to have first a picture, almost like a drawing or a photograph of a strawberry. But as they really study that, they're going to start to have memories of experiences that they've had with a strawberry. They're going to think about what it tastes like. They're going to think about what it feels like in their hands, and really, and what it tastes like or feels like in their mouth as they're eating it. And so that's not that big of a jump for most people. There might be people
Right.
with divergencies that make it difficult for that to happen. But for the most part, everybody can do that. So if I tell you blue Mustang, you can visualize either a blue horse or a blue car in your head. And that might lead to, what is the smell? Yes, Bram, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Um,
What an
what is the
interesting word.
smell? What is the smell of the leather? What is the feel of the heat on the seats? You might get into some of the memories that you have associated with that idea. So the idea of visualization is something that is not, as the name implies, just visual. It involves all of the senses and activating every part of your association with that. So back on strawberry, if someone is allergic to strawberries and had an anaphylactic reaction to it, their experience of that visualization will be different than somebody who has a real affection for that specific fruit. So it's not just about what you see when you're visualizing. It's about as what you're feeling and what other senses are coming into play. That's my experience as well.
So and Kelly is kind of co-signing here on the whole visual versus feeling, but like Katrina said, it's a whole part of the process. It's not one thing. Um, and there is this sort of there is an opportunity, and I wonder, Bram, maybe you can speak to this in the comment section, to engage with media that you have been able to visual with before. Like, let's say you watch a movie on something that you're hoping to manifest and using scenes from that movie. I wonder if you've ever tried that. I'm not problem solving here, but I'm wondering the extent of aphantasia, like what the limitations are, because I find that it's very interesting in the comment section. Um, but that memory usage can be very powerful. And if it's not a visual experience, getting into the body, what does it feel like? And this brings us to the power of visualization. And, we'll speak more to this later, maybe, but like some of its limitations, like Katrina was saying, if you've had a negative interaction with something that you're hoping to or will be a part of what you're trying to materialize, it could have a very interesting effect on you. And then we might talk about, getting into healing and all of that. But there's also first person visualization. So where you are watching yourself accomplish a task or feeling your body move in that way. Um, I've had instances where I was going to give a talk, and I stood up and I started motioning as if I was already in that space, and getting comfortable, getting my body used to um, what I was doing, getting used to the what do you call it, muscle memory of it all. Um, and then there's the third person where you're kind of, it's like you're looking at a memory. So, but there's a lot of science behind visualization as
Mhm.
a useful tool. And that has a lot to do with the neural pathways in your brain and the mirror neurons. So, one thing that was discovered decades ago is that mirror neurons help us to uh, sort of bring our environment inward. So when you see something as possible, then it becomes possible for you. You can feel into it. A lot of empaths have what I would say are probably very sensitive mirror neurons, as they can watch something and then feel it, or um, somebody can relate a story and then um, again it's a felt experience for the empath or the sensitive person involved. So the science behind that, when we factor in those kind of responses to visualization, we can also, maybe those are the negative impact, but we can also look to the positive impacts of this to overcome blocks, obstacles. If you find a negative reaction to going back to the strawberry piece and you want to heal, that moment, what happened, part of what you can do is maybe visualize what it would be like to have an immune system that isn't sensitive to strawberries, or um, neutralizing the experience. And I'm using very general terms, and it sounds very easy as I'm saying it, but to go into that visualization it's challenging, and it takes practice for sure.
What you're describing makes me think of a direction I was going when I was working with people who could not visualize or felt they could not visualize. Is almost anyone, even devoid of that ability, can intellectualize a visualization. And that's another direction that we can take is, if I tell you, and sticking with a theme here, if I tell you I'm going to take you to the grocery store and I want you to go point to the strawberries, even if you are unable in your, as far as your belief, to visualize what a, to see the details of the strawberry, you intellectually know what a strawberry looks like. So you can go to, or most people do, some probably don't, but most people do, you can go to the produce section and point, even without identifying signs, and say this is the strawberry. And so at the same time, when we are counseling someone who's grief stricken, we do
Mm,
not have to experience the loss of a child or, a catastrophic experience to know this is something really intense and horrible that this person is going through. Now, each person is going to process such a trauma differently, but we can know this is a person going through an intense trauma without visualizing that experience. And so sometimes it's just a matter of intellectualizing what we're looking for. Like with spell work, I want a job that pays me well, where I'm appreciated, and where I'm feeling like I'm fulfilling my role in the world. I mean, just fill in the blanks. We may never have had that job. We don't know what that job feels like, but we know how we want to feel.
mhm.
And we can always put that codicil on there, this or better. So that might not have the ability to visualize because it's not anything we've ever experienced. So unless we are really good at visualizing, it's going to be hard for us to move ourselves into the future to know what something we have never experienced is going to feel like. And
Right.
a lot of times with spell work, we're either trying to recapture something we had before or create something we've never had.
Mm.
And so my thought is that a lot of times spell work and even healing involve a visualization of something that has never been, which relies on intellectualizing the situation. God, I hope that made sense.
It did, it did. It reminded me of, and I wanted to touch on what Brahm here was saying. about, you know, maybe not even seeing a picture of the moon, but diving into the feelings of it. I'm reminded here about uh, how we are directed by our clairs, right? So it's
Oh,
easy
it's
to
on my list. Look, clairs.
right. It's easy to tell a person. This is telepathy in real time, guys. It's easy to tell a person with clairvoyance to visualize because it's how they exist. Like when people tell me stories, I get into the story with them in real time, and I'm watching it like a movie in my head. No problem. I'm also hearing things as they're talking. I promise I'm not crazy. This is how it works. And but if for a clairsentient individual, tell them to feel it, tell them to, or if that is you, you should be getting into the process of feeling. And it doesn't take away from the visualization element of it. And even down here, so Brahm was explaining the extent of the aphantasia, is, I hope I'm pronouncing it right, um, in terms of using movies, even working with the themes of movies to access things that you've never had or never experienced. Even using the themes is a way to shift through the whole visualization process. In terms of healing, because you brought up a great point in terms of brujeria, where or magic or witchcraft, where you're trying to create a circumstance that's never been or reclaim something. I think what I tend to see a lot in the healing communities is this like ungrounded approach to being in alignment with, being in alignment with something and then attracting it to you. And I say ungrounded because it's not anchored into anything. Like there's no consideration for the fact that that thing may not be for your path, or that thing would only hold you back from everything that you're asking for. And so you visualize, you feel, you get into your senses, you know how you want to feel when you have it, but then you continue to ask for something that is greater than or different from what you are trying to, your desired outcome. And so I guess what I'm pointing to you here is like what seems like a common obstacle with visualization or the use of visualization. And um, the best way to overcome that using it would be, yes, you know how you want to feel. As you get into that visualization, does it actually feel accessible? Does it feel, the term I use is sticky? Does it feel like you're doing this sort of double Dutch dance where you're like, I want it, but I don't know, but I want it, but I don't know, or resistance coming up to say I want it, but I feel agitated when I think about it or when I reach for it. Um, Visualization can bring that up, and that's a place for healing as well. So I don't know if that made sense. Started rambling.
It did, and it does. And I have huge experience with exactly what you described, at least that's what I think you're describing. And that is the conflict between visualization for manifestation versus conditioned thinking. And a lot of times we are conditioned to believe that the things that we want and that even things our spirits are crying out for are not within our reach. And sometimes they are not, or they're not meant for our path, or whatever it might be. But sometimes it's a matter of being conditioned by life to believe that if you are ever wealthy and have abundance, that you're just going to turn into an asshole. Or if you are in a healthy relationship, you are so fractured and broken that you are just going to screw it up and damn the relationship. So we start
Mhm.
to have these conditioned beliefs. I fell victim to this when Eric was looking for our new home. Now,
Mm.
I fell victim to this as an experienced practitioner of decades. And so, I like to think that I'm actualized. I like to think that I've worked hard to get to where I am, that I've put in uncountable hours to become better at what I do. And still, Eric worked very hard to find a new house for us after we lost ours. And he found this beautiful home. And the immediate response, now we were in negotiations to buy the home the first time I saw it. We were making an offer on it. And I walked into the house and I knew I had the same exact response that Eric had. And Eric had told me when he found this house, I don't think that's the house for us. And I kind of discredited it, even though I had kept coming back on the MLS to this one house as the one that I wanted to really pursue. Because he told me, I don't think that's the house for us, I disqualified it. And then he came back to it. We were going to make an offer. I went to look at it. I walked into the house and I said, in my head, the exact words, people like you don't live in houses like this.
Ooh.
Because it was such a beautiful home. And I caught myself thinking that, as you know, it would, because I'm 61, I lived most of my life in poverty. The idea I had in my head was that I would never reach a point in my life where I would live in a house like this. Now, granted, this is not a mansion. We're not talking about a castle, but it's a beautiful home.
Right.
And it was reasonably priced. It wasn't real far outside of our budget. And conditioned thinking interfered with my ability to manifest, because I had this idea that this, and so once I cleared that from my thinking, I identified it and cleared it from my thinking, Eric agreed that he had similar thoughts, and
Oh,
immediately the
interesting.
house was ours. It was meant to be, it was our home, but we were blocking that idea by preconceived thought. And I see people do this all the time. I call it the buts. You know, they want this but, they want this but, they want this job but, they want this relationship but. You know, there's just always a reason why they can't follow through with what they're actively visualizing. So they're visualizing an outcome, they're visualizing how they want to feel. That exact thing comes to them and they start disqualifying it and picking it apart.
Yep.
That's a little different than what you're talking about, but it's a cousin of what you're talking about.
I think it's right in line. And I've seen people do this with love and partnership in a great deal. I want this partner. I want them to do these things. I need this level of support. And then it comes. I was just having this this conversation this morning where it was like, I have to keep reminding myself I asked for that.
Well, and I go back to what you and I both did when our shops opened, right? We put the ceiling on what that shop could produce, remember?
Oh, yeah.
By saying, oh my gosh, if I can just make rent. If I can just make rent, I'll be happy. And we did.
Yeah, we
The
did
first
every
time.
time.
We made just enough money to pay our rent and no more.
Right. And it was like, oh, I don't know how long this is going to last. Oh, look,
Yeah.
Kelly is saying you deserve it. And
Oh,
it's magnificent.
but we do put limits on our love. If I could just find somebody to care about me, I wouldn't want another thing in the world. And we say ludicrous things like that.
Right. It is ludicrous. We start limiting our actual humanness. And then when we get it, there's all kinds of imbalances. But what's funny is that visualization is actually the cure to this as well. Like it is its own downfall and its own cure. As you went into why you were feeling off about the house and realizing where the thoughts were coming from, I'm sure you had moments where you could see in your mind how that played out. And then you made a decision with that visual and those feelings and shifted your circumstance. So there and again,
Right.
visualization.
And in our situation, we didn't even have to switch our visualization because it was physically right in front of us.
Right.
We could literally look at it and see it. And so that made it much easier. The visualization is what was interfering. The actual
the wrong visual.
Absolutely. And my son one time got trapped in a magical loop of visualization. He was 18 years old. He had just struck out on his own. He, on a whim, took a Greyhound bus to Macon, Georgia, to live with his longtime best friend. And he was creating the life, man. He was on top of the world and creating the life. And he wanted a partner more than anything. He just wanted a partner. And so I did what all good witches do. And I said, Joe, you need to make a list. Make a list of what you're looking for in a partner, and get that in your head when you're going out and meeting people. And it was so funny because he, got the pencil, writing down the list of everything he wants in a partner. And he starts meeting people. And I'm getting these letters from him all the time. Mom, I forgot to list not a lesbian. Mom, I forgot to list never been to prison. Mom, I forgot to list not a drug addict. And it was as though the universe was just training him
Yep.
for the
Manifestation by
ways that
default.
we can trip ourselves up. Because
Yeah.
boy, these people had everything on the list, but he forgot to put those different things on there.
I love that. I was very witchy of you and very Virgo of you. Like all of my clients are like, you and these lists, and I'm like, they work. You know exactly
Well,
what to
and
do when
he
I say make a list.
he has been married to the love of his life for more than 20 years now. And she isn't as any of those things. And she's absolutely lovely. And we adore her. So it's just, I don't believe in telling that story. I don't believe the universe sits and waits to trip specifically you up on something
Oh
and to
no.
make a fool of you by, oh, but you didn't say not a serial killer. I don't think the universe does that. But I
No.
do think the universe was fucking with him just a little bit.
Great. A little too open. As you were recounting his trials, I started to think about also kind of how visualization occurs in people who, like back to your story, who people who believe they deserve stuff. Like one of the key aspects or key examples of visualization that tends to come to my mind is how athletes and public speakers will visualize themselves, getting up on stage or executing a win in their field. And when that happens, they're already in that mindset that I'm going to do it. And there's just so much to like also accessing those feelings of it's okay if I mess up. Like you can visualize what happens if I say the wrong thing or do the wrong thing or, whatever the case is. Visualization can be a full experience, and it's great for healing those places where you feel like you might mess up, or imposter syndrome is a lot something that
Mhm.
I come in contact with a lot in my clients and those I support. So
We use visualization a great deal when we're working with clients who need to heal an experience from the past,
hmm
because they are coming forward with their impression of what happened, sometimes maintaining the impression of what happened when they were 5 or 6 years old and viewing an
right.
experience as a child and taking them back very carefully through that trauma and giving them the objective perspective, or giving them an adult perspective, can sometimes help them to heal a past hurt or a past trauma that has been holding them back. And
Absolutely.
so that's a way that you don't even have to visualize again, but you can intellectualize, and that aids in that form of visualization. And one of the things I've mentioned several times on our broadcast is the study that showed, it was a psychological endeavor that showed that when we watch something happen, such as a movie or um, a news footage, we go through some of the same physiological experiences as people who are
Absolutely.
going through that. And we go through some of the same psychological responses as people who are going through that. And so that is a way of visualizing and actually legitimizing the process of visualization through science that doesn't require that you be able to visualize because it can just show you. So, like you were saying, if I need to visualize about public speaking, watch the King's Speech or
Mhm.
some movie that teaches a person over time how to do public speaking. If you want to visualize wealth, watch a movie about somebody becoming wealthy or
Right.
somebody finding achieving their goals, and that can help you to have those feelings even if you're not able to visualize sensorily from your eyes. And again, those clairs, man, those clairs identify how we process psychic energy. And so if we are clairvoyant, we are going to be better at visualizing. If we're clairaudient, then hearing things, audiobooks, uh, things like that are going to affect us more deeply than sitting and trying to visualize. Clairsentient, we want the whole experience. So we're going to watch movies. And you can use those aids in your visualization and also be careful. The other side of that is the movies, the input that is going to negatively affect your forward progress.
One of the
And
things that I was, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
no, that's what I was. Yeah, I think I know what you're going to say. So go.
Well, I was trying to find, in line with what you're giving as examples of movies and things like that. One of the things that came to mind was what was being broadcast about COVID in 2020 and how people sometimes like vicariously they'll drop their immune system because of the visuals, like their body will respond by lowering its immunity, and then they'll get sick, or the uh, this is a funny one. The people that gag or throw up just by mere mention of it or seeing somebody go through it. But one of the books that's helpful, if you feel like you're trapped or stuck in life, is a book by Joanne Marcy, I think it is, and Molly Young Brown, called Coming Back to Life. Maybe I may be quoting the wrong book, but there's a book where this woman was dying of her disease, and she got her prognosis, and was life was happening, and she was not supposed to make it, and then she decided, and she visualized and she did all of these things so that her body could start to recover as it was deteriorating. Joe Dispenza has the same, that one I know for certain, has the same uh, process. So he had a spinal injury, and doctors told him he was never going to walk again. And then he started to visualize not only his spine healing for the way that it was before, so working with the power of visualization when your body was healthy, but he also started visualizing the future, like that it would be healthier than it was previously. So, I mean, it had some level of deterioration before, but that it would actually heal and be healthy again. And he improved faster than doctors anticipated. And it completely changed his view on life. And he now has a whole platform on that. So if you need the inspiration, to your point, Katrina, Joe Dispenza is available for that on every platform. Go ahead. I don't. Go ahead.
Did
I
you
don't
have
think that's all.
something?
No, no, no. Is that what you thought I was going to say?
What was interesting is I was going to bring up COVID,
Oh,
and when we were talking about the visualization for reinforcing what you're wanting to do, um, with COVID specifically, and also, and I'm not going to get too deeply into this, with political climate,
mm,
people
yeah.
often use visualization to create a reaction in somebody else.
Yep.
So with COVID, what went on a lot of the times is in either direction, people were looking to capitalize on the global fear that was happening with COVID. And so you had one side of people that was promoting fear of the vaccination. We had another side of people that was promoting fear of COVID. And they did that by drawing very visual descriptions of things that were going on. With the political climate, we have on both sides of the fence people who are illustrating worst case scenarios. And I'm not saying that they're doing that irrationally,
No.
but that they're attempting to leverage a response from somebody through visualization. They're depending on someone being able to visualize what they're saying and what they're illustrating and to get them to have an emotional response based on that. Now, that's not magic. That's not anything that we do specifically, but it's a way that, for lack of a better term, mundane people leverage and maximize visualization to get an outcome. So, as you were describing early on, this is about science too. This is not just about magic. This is about the way that we are able to conceptualize an image somebody wants to create in our minds and to
Absolutely.
use that for an outcome. And I do think that that can make people sicker. I think it can make us more vulnerable to COVID
And
if
more
we are,
manipulatable.
yeah, agreed.
Manipulatable. I
It's a
mean,
good one.
advertising giants do this all the time. They use specific colors to invoke emotion. So when you come in contact with them visually, it elicits a response. Um, Brahm here. So I'd love to take this because I think it's something that people, a lot of people are using visualization for, or affirmations that we talked about like a show or two ago. Um, uh, so that negative inner self talk, I know I engaged with it. Brahm, if you want, I don't know if you feel comfortable putting your process down in the comment section, but I imagine what this looks like if I was to work with a person on using visualization to work on their inner negative self talk. My go to, as a healer anyway, would be let's visualize the first time you heard this. Let's visualize the first person, at least that you can remember, right? Because sometimes it's a stepwise process. So the first person that you remember speaking negatively to you may be an ex. And then once we get through that, then let's look at family, then let's look at, initial caregivers, so on and so forth. And in that visualization process, acknowledging the wounds and the feelings, because often the body, the mind, the spirit wants some recognition first, rather than just telling you, oh, do it positively. No, give yourself the space to say that really fucking sucked. And then, or that was extremely traumatic and I'm upset about it, I'm still angry, work through that. And then going and reframing, revisualizing, either to have that person understand that what they said was wrong, what they did was wrong, to intervene so you can visualize yourself intervening in that process to say, hey, that's not okay, to whoever's giving you that negative feedback. And then like the last piece of it being uh, engaging with you and watching yourself be kind to yourself. And maybe that takes another list where you write down things that are amazing about you, or you have people do that on your behalf and it's something you go over and you visualize that that is a part of who you are. But that would be like my, negative self-talk workshop in a in a nutshell. Do
You
you have
know,
thoughts on
so often we allow people from our past to create our truths when we would never go to that person and ask their opinion about us.
that?
And so it becomes ingrained in us that this must be true because I've heard it and believed it for so long, it must be the truth. And when we do that work and go back and see who first told us that, we can start to recognize that the reinforcements that we had of that opinion were ones that we viewed through the filter of having originally heard that. Whereas I would never ask for example, my mother's opinion about XYZ. You know what, Mom, what do you think I should be looking for in my relationship or whatever that might be? I will still believe what she said 30 years ago about how I am in a relationship.
Mm,
And so, or how I behave in a relationship. So we really have to root out, and often with Dahlia or someone who is a responsible healer, where those initial thoughts came from. We were not born believing that about ourselves. So, how did we develop that idea? Oh my gosh, I'm always so clumsy. Or, gosh, I can just never find, I don't have good taste in partners. I just don't. Where did those ideas come from? And would we trust the opinion of the person who gave us that idea in the first place? And maybe you don't have good taste in partners. Maybe you do undermine your relationships. That's really
mhm.
possible. But
True.
you need, for your own benefit, to find out if that's the truth or not. And I,
Right.
I really think we should always question our truths, especially when those truths are foundations we're building on. We need to look at whether or not it's sand or it's cement.
Or quicksand.
Or
Right. It's literally killing you.
sinkholes.
Brahm, just to acknowledge you, I'm glad it was helpful. And make it your own. That's always my biggest thing. Uh, and what is most important to me is this will look different for everybody. But the role of belief in all of this, I love Katrina touched on that. The role of belief is so powerful when it comes to the effectiveness of visualization too. So I saw a trend uh, a couple years back where it was like fake it until you make it. And I admittedly have said that to people who were just like what I would say is more stuck around the mechanics of something that they want and less embedded in a traumatic experience or uh, trying to overcome it. Was just like, well, I don't know how this is supposed to work. And it was like, you know what? You don't have to know. This is what we're going to do. And so, trying to press on their belief systems to say, you know what? I just need you to know that it's possible first. Visualization has been helpful, and then like Katrina was saying, it's going to the grocery store and seeing that strawberries exist, versus like, okay, is this, strawberries must grow on Mars and I've never encountered them, kind of thing. um visualizations, I think, in terms of healing, are also a powerful tool for gratitude, which is something that we've brought up on the show before, how powerful gratitude is. Visualization can be great for accessing feelings that you need for a boost. So I can recall one thing that's flashing in my mind is a ceremony that I went through. And after going through that ceremony, I was all hugged up and in community with everybody around me. It was just like, oh my God, I don't know how this could be this amazing. And then fast forward 6 months out from that ceremony, I was feeling like garbage. And then I can't tell you the mechanics of how it came to my mind or why, but I found myself visualizing that moment. And with time, it was, uh, I felt better. I felt like life had a little bit more meaning. I felt that I could get out of bed at least and then go into doing more with myself, for myself. And so it's a powerful practice for gratitude as well.
With Colleen's comment about what if you can't speak to the person who led you to believe those things, I think it's very rare that you can speak to them. I think
Oh,
that
yeah.
most of the time they've passed, or you aren't in contact with them anymore for whatever reason,
Or it's
um,
not safe.
or it's not safe, right? And I think that very few times that I've led somebody through healing a past relationship or that past knowledge, it's almost never that they've actually been able to communicate with the person.
Oh, yeah, no. And I mean, I think we've talked about this a little bit as you're healing that. there are often people of the same frequency in your life. So guaranteed, uh, if you had an issue with your mom, you may be playing those issues out with your boss. And if you go through the visualization process with the place of origin or the person of origin, you
Mhm.
may find uh, more helpful energy when you have to interact with that boss. I mean, sometimes it's not that linear, um, but you don't necessarily have to deal with the person. And I almost never recommend dealing with the person, because, like
Mhm.
Katrina said, not only can you not talk to them, but if you did, are they going to actually hear you? Are they going to recognize where where they caused a problem? Because a lot of people get defensive when that kind of stuff comes up. They don't care about your feelings. They only care about how you're hurting them by telling them that they did something wrong. So
Here's an example of that, Colleen, and I think you've heard me tell this story before. Um, I have a very clear memory of being 5 or 6 years old and my mother putting me on a stool right next to the stove where she was cooking and saying, "Honey, you're not much to look at, so we need to teach you to cook so you can get a husband."
fuck.
And I remember that. And I remembered that from a very early age. And when I was probably 20 or 25, I talked to my mother about that and the impact that that had on me. And my mother, she was she was by all accounts a good person. Everybody loved my mother. But my mother looked at me and said, "I would never have said that to you. I don't know where you got that. That did not happen."
Mm,
So, and she was frustrated. And she said, I can't believe you carried this around for all this time, believing I said that when I never said that.
mm.
And that was more damaging to me than carrying that information around with me because I know I heard that. Now, was I 5 or 6 and I dreamed that and thought that it was real? I don't know, because memory is a weird thing. But I would not have put those words together in that configuration about myself at
Right.
age 5 or 6. Did someone else say it and I transposed it to my mom? I don't know. But she was adamant. I didn't say that. Do not attribute something that hateful to me. So that's another reason why it doesn't work. So everything Dahlia and I are talking about in regard to retraining how you feel about that place of origin of that thought is about what happens inside you. It's about a
Right.
conversation with you, not about a conversation with anybody else. I see all of these um, case studies and psychological shows and stuff where people go back and talk to their parents and they say, when you said that, that was really painful for me. And the parent cries and says, I know that must have been really hard. That doesn't happen.
It's
It
Hollywood.
it doesn't happen. Anytime you try to hold someone accountable for something they did a very long time ago that is subject to memory, it just doesn't go well, unfortunately. And the sad part is that's what we need to heal.
Oh yeah.
We need accountability. We need somebody saying, I get it. And it just 99% of the time will not happen. So that's depressing.
I don't think it's depressing, but I think we're approaching like a really great place to say this isn't a cure all, right? Like if I think if you are the kind of person, and I say kind of person in quotes with no distinction, if you're the kind of person that feels like they can't move on without accountability, um, then visualization probably is not for you. You know, if you need that person to say, I did wrong, I was wrong, and I'm sorry, um, in real time, then visualization is probably not going to be the best for that part of your life. I mean, we can definitely use it in other areas, like maybe you visualize being strong every time you have to interact with somebody similar, or whatever the case is, or having the right words.
Well, you
So
will keep, as you pointed out, Dahlia, you will keep drawing people to you who mirror that original thought because something in your spirit wants to resolve that.
Mm-hmm.
And so those
Absolutely.
things will keep duplicating until you get that worked out. And then once you work it out and you have that breakthrough, there will still be relapse that happens from time to time.
Oh,
But
yeah.
overall, that behavior will seem repugnant to you now
Mhm.
after you have the breakthrough. So you will resist it more than you did before.
And that's not, this transcends the conversation of like karma and woo woo concepts. I mean, this is a psychological thing. You can find studies done on how some qualities manifest for people in their partnerships and in their intimate relationships as they try to heal, needing approval or trying to heal abandonment stuff or trying to heal any kind of disruption to their childhood through the people that are closest to them. Um, so it's psychological and mystical at the same time, but it does happen, as Katrina said. Yeah, it's a little, it's depressing when you think about it in its own container, but there's so much more opportunity than that. Um, one of the things that I think if we were dealing with such a depressing topic, I would be trying to bring visualization in to stay motivated. Like, well, if having that thing or having that resolution isn't possible, can I, visualize some other form of inspiration that has me keep going, has me feeling energized about bringing new people into my life? I think that's probably the approach that I would take, is like focusing on the, if you focusing on the newness. Like if you know what you don't want, then you absolutely know what you do want. And then going into that sort of visualization anytime that I tried to approach a new community or went to the grocery store, or what have you. I've used visualization for getting parking spaces. It's very common for me to do, just to play games with the universe and go, okay, I still got it, um, or visualizing people wanting to feed me and then getting invited out, So I would
I'll
like,
tell you a way people use visualization and they don't realize it. Have you ever? I know I'm not the only one that does this. You're out and about, going to grocery stores or doing errands. You see somebody that you know from your past, and then you have a moment where you realize it's not them, but you hear from them within 24 hours or so, the
oh
actual
yeah,
person.
yeah.
So I know lots of people that have that happen. They'll be out at Walmart and they'll be like, "Oh, that's so and so. What are they doing here? I went to school with them." And then they'll get a Facebook message. So that's one way that visualization creates inroads. Probably what happened is that when you saw that person that you thought was your cousin or you thought was your friend, it created a link between you and the actual person. The actual person picked up on that and then wanted to reach out to you. So we do that all the time. And again, even I don't want to say muggles, but even people that are not working and living in the magical world do that and go, "Oh my, what a coincidence. That's amazing." And
Yeah.
yeah, it sure is, isn't it?
It's less amazing when it's somebody you don't want to deal with, but yes, it does happen that
Yeah, it's
way.
true.
You pointed out that it creates a link, and I think that for me is like the least, like the most condensed thing that we're trying to say in terms of using visualization for different things, is to consciously establish that link. Like your son, when he was trying to manifest a partner, he was creating all kinds of links. and
He
then
was.
and then eventually had to refine that process. We are, and to your point earlier, we are unconsciously creating links all the time, and so you might as
Life is
well.
a choose your own adventure book. It just
Yeah,
is. And you get to write the next chapter.
right. Are you going to get what, what are you going to get I was thinking of the Appalachian Trail game. I don't know if I said that
Oh,
right.
yeah.
Are you going to get dysentery, or are you going to
Oh,
choose to
Oregon
go
Trail, yeah.
down? Yes, Oregon Trail. That's what it was. Are you going to, take the left road and continue your journey? It's all opportunity, and visualization can be a major part of that process in both positive ways and healing ways. I know I've taken clients through visualization in order to give them answers to things that have not yet happened. So, one comes to mind where she was having issues with her young child. And she was like, I do not know how to approach this circumstance because the partner's not helping, the child's out of control, or high energy, I shouldn't say out of control, high energy, and I'm not, and I'm exhausted. What do I do? And so we did a visualization, we did a meditation. I said, put yourself back in that circumstance and attempt to have a conversation with them. How did it feel? It doesn't feel like it's going through. Okay, well, attempt to comfort yourself in saying that you can't control either of them. Start asking yourself what you want, what you need, and we went through all of that only for her to arrive at the conclusion that it wasn't that she was having issues with their behavior; she was having issues with her response to their behavior. And then we had the answer, and she went on to shift her response. So that's a good way to use visualization to shift your circumstances if you if those circumstances need, a second glance. So
Absolutely. And you are always smarter now than you were then, whenever then is. If then was yesterday or last week or 2 months ago, you have the advantage of hindsight for how something worked out. And so if you can imagine having a conversation where you relive that experience, but in your ear, you've got a prompt where now your smarter self is talking to you and telling you how this is going to unfold and asking you all the right questions about, okay, how is that working out for you? Or is that going to be a good thing to do? Or what would happen if? And you can guide your previous self through the situation again. you know, yes, it's great to have somebody like Dahlia who's experienced with this, absolutely. But you yourself are smart and you yourself are experienced. You yourself saw the undesired outcome. So if you can go back in your mind and have a conversation with your younger self, whether it's a week ago or 10 years ago, and guide them through that situation again, it changes how you feel about that situation. That it gives you
100.
new awareness.
That's always the answer: awareness and management. Always the answer. That's what we should call this instead of crossroads of cognizance: awareness and
Crossroads of
management.
management, yeah.
um, all in all, peeps and folks, visualization has its benefits and it has its limitations, and it can be a beautiful thing. It can be an enlightening thing. It can be an intense thing. I mean, one thing uh, that should be considered is if visualization is too intense for you, if you're a highly sensitive person, maybe it's not something that you should do on your own. And talking to a therapist, a practitioner of some sort to support you, a counselor, what have you, would be beneficial. But visualization can be a gateway to many, many different things. It can open many doors. And I think it's worth a try ultimately. I think that's the end of this, is that it's worth a try. And everybody is capable of it on some level, visually, mentally, emotionally, even spiritually. I can spiritually feel, I mean, how many times have we had that go on, Katrina? It's like I feel somebody enter this place and they're like, the next question from anybody in the vicinity is where? And it's like, well,
Yeah.
I didn't look at them, but this is what happened. So, any closing thoughts on visualization?
Don't disqualify its usage just because it feels odious to you. remember there are different types of visualization. It's not all just about seeing the movie in your head. And the other side of it is that I feel like some form of visualization is almost vital to any type of magical work you're going to be doing, and definitely helps with any type of healing work that you're doing. So again, that's a way that you're using actual visualization to limit your access to visualization. So don't do that.
It's a loop. It's a crazy loop. All right, people. That is the end of our show. We were 1 minute late. Now we're leaving 1 minute late. Look at that. We'll catch you next time,
Bye.
next Thursday on Crossroads of Cognizance. Bye, everyone.